Hey bro,
Ah,
I'm looking for an SUV.
okay.
I've got about 75 grand to spare.
Okay.
But here's the problem. My housing area got a lot of potholes,
Okay.
right? And I know there are two cars that I'm looking at, but I can't seem to make a decision.
Which ones, huh?
The Perodua Aruz and the Perodua Ativa. So both are SUVs,
Uh-huh.
but both are great cars also. I still don't know which one to choose. What do you think?
Price is also quite similar, right?
Huh?
Okay. Tell you what. Thankfully for you, we've got both of these cars here today. So in this video, we're going to find out which is better, the Perodua Ativa or the Perodua Aruz. And more importantly, which kind of buyer are these cars for? My name is Aiman Abdullah,
And my name is Izzat Shahril.
and today we're going to look at Perodua's two SUVs.
Okay, I like the look of the Ativa.
And I don't blame you. The Ativa is a really good looking car. For a Perodua, it's especially bold and engaging. It's meant for a slightly more youthful audience, which is why it has a lot of bold touches, at least for Perodua lah. You have the dual tone roof, you have the 17-inch alloy wheels, you have this big trapezoidal grille, bigger than almost any other Perodua out there. You've got your full LED headlights, scrolling indicators, and you have this very garang X face to it, which looks very similar to other Perodua models, so it looks like it's part of the family, but it still looks very aggressive, very in your face. This is a contemporary, modern design, compact SUV, and it looks good.
I agree.
But the Perodua Aruz is a bit more mature.
Okay, what do you mean by mature?
Okay, so if you look at the Perodua Aruz, you have this slightly less aggressive face. It's a bit more friendly. So you have these slim bi-beam LED daytime running lights with LED positioning lights. You still have a very prominent grille, but it's less brash, it's less in your face. And this bonnet curves down gently to make it look friendlier and a bit more approachable. If you go down the sides, it still has dual tone 17-inch alloy wheels, but the design is less aggressive than what you see in the Ativa. You also see a lot less complex surfacing. Again, because this is a very large car, you don't really have to play with the surfacing as much. And now, in this model, you also get this gorgeous passion red with the integrated standard side steps with Aruz badging. Then when you go down to the back, it looks very Perodua in the sense that you have these large LED tail lights, you have this chrome garnish across, and it just looks mature. This looks like a family car. This is the sort of car that when you see it, you know it's driven by someone who is very, very sensible, someone who thinks a generation ahead even. Whereas the Ativa is more for someone of today. They think about how to seize today and how to have an adventure today. So you can tell that these cars are meant to appeal to very different people, but they look equally good, just in a different definition.
Okay, so we've already talked about the outside. What about the inside? Okay, so we're inside the Aruz now. Tell me about the interior.
So like I said earlier, the Aruz is more mature, right?
Okay.
So it's meant for a slightly more mature, family-oriented buyer. So if you look at this interior, it's stylish, yes, but you can tell that the focus here is to emphasize space. It's here to emphasize durability. So you have things like these silver elements that stretch all the way across the dash, again, to kind of emphasize the width of the car. You have this straight, almost free-fall center stack, again, to emphasize the height of the car, so it makes the car feel more voluminous. Now, in front of you, you have this relatively large leather-wrapped steering wheel, but you have analog dials with a little digital gauge in the center to give you things like your fuel consumption reading, your fuel meter, and stuff like that. And you also have your digital aircon controls down here, but most importantly in a car like this, you actually have a passenger seatbelt indicator. So this will actually show you whether or not your passengers in the back are wearing their seatbelts, and if they take them off, it'll come up here.
Okay.
That's really important, especially when you're driving a family car, because you can't afford to be turning around and yelling at your passengers or children to tell them, put on your seatbelt, because child safety is very important.
Yes, it is.
And again, that emphasis on durability kind of shows with all of the materials used. So everything here, yes, it's not exactly the most pliant thing in the world, but you can tell this is the sort of thing that will last the lifetime of the car. Everything down to the gear selector, the handbrake lever, the steering wheel, all the switchgear, you can tell is just built to last. It's meant to deal with all the flotsam that a family can throw at it and whatever else. Everybody uses their cars for multiple things these days. So a lot of people with cars like these will use them for business. They'll use them to trade and all sorts of other things. I've seen Aruz owners use their cars to haul bricks and all sorts of other stuff. So with that, you need a car to be durable, and the Aruz is most definitely durable for family and all sorts of other things. And if you look in the back, obviously this is Aruz's main selling point because it is physically larger than the Ativa. So you have a very generously sized second row which can be reclined, they can be slid forwards or backwards depending on whether or not you want to maximize space in the rear or if you want to maximize space in the second row. And of course you have a third row of seats with 2 more seats right at the back. And even back there you still have a 12-volt socket, so passengers back there can still charge up devices if you have a little USB sticker thingy, right? And most importantly, all passengers in this car will be comfortable for 2 reasons. One, the Perodua Aruz AV comes as standard with Lumar tint, which means you have decent heat rejection and you also have film protection, so these things can't shatter in case of unsavory elements. And the second thing is you have this blower. So unfortunately it's not an air conditioner unit, it's just a blower. But what happens is you have a vent up here on the dash that blows cold air straight into these intakes, and then this blower will then blow that to the second and third row to ensure that all passengers are kept comfortable.
That's clever.
So even out in the third row, you will still be nice and comfy, which cannot be said of other 3-row SUVs that we've tested, that's for sure.
Yes. Okay. Oh, this looks really good.
It does. And again, you can tell that this car is meant to be durable. So even though all these seats are leather, you can tell that it's a sort of leather that shouldn't be a pain for you to maintain and keep clean and maintain in good condition over a longer period.
One of those rough leather material, I like this perforatedness in the center.
Exactly, and these semi-bucket seats in front make sure that you are comfortable even over a longer journey. But, like I said, this is a car that's more mature, that's more geared at family men. Now, let's see what happens when Perodua decides to take the more bold approach.
Okay, so let's take a look at the Ativa next. Okay, now we're in the Ativa, and personally I like this more, but okay, tell me about this.
So I can see why you'd like this more, because again, this is meant for a more youthful sort of buyer, and you like to think that you're still young. So the interior of this car features a lot of things that are meant to seem a little bit more exciting and a little bit more engaging to a more younger buyer. So for starters, you have this 9-inch touchscreen right ahead of you, set in like this floating display kind of thing, which is right in your line of sight. So if you have your navigation here, for example, you don't have to keep adjusting your focus from the road ahead to the navi and then back to the road again. This isn't the only screen in here though. In this AV model and also on the mid-range H model, you also get a digital instrument cluster. The thing is, they say that it's they have another name for it, but like it or not, it's a digital instrument cluster. So you have a screen on one side which is infinitely customizable, you have multiple designs to choose from, and of course you have a multi-info display in the middle where you can choose whatever it is that you want to display, be it your fuel consumption or your range or even an eco indicator or even a wheel position sort of show thing. I don't know why that's there. I think it's because this vehicle is available in other markets with 4-wheel drive, and so that would be kind of important. But here it's just good to know so that if you park your car with your wheels at an angle, it will remind you, so you don't have to set off before you realize, oh no, my wheels are at an angle.
Okay.
On top of that, of course, you have the new multi-function steering wheel by Perodua, so you have all the buttons on it. So on this side, you have a lot of the buttons that would control the digital instrument cluster. On that side, you have all the buttons for the adaptive cruise control.
Adaptive cruise control.
So we'll talk about that in a second. And then on the bottom row, you have all of the audio control. So you have your volume on one side, your skip and next track on the other side, and you also have a power button. That doesn't actually turn the car off. What that does is it actually sets the ECU up in such a way that it provides a little bit more power and a little bit more punch when you need it, for like when you're overtaking or something to that effect.
Oh, okay.
Now, if you look around this interior, again, the design just feels a lot more youthful. So in this AV model, for example, you have a lot of these sort of red highlights sort of behind the air conditioning control, behind the air conditioned vents, and even on these little side grabs. You even get a little bit of red down here on the sides of the center console, where you have these little cubbies here where you can hide a phone, for example.
Okay.
And even the seats, as I'm sure you've already noticed, look a lot more youthful. You have
Yes.
these black leatherette seats with red piping and red sort of accent bits all around,
I
and then
really
on
like
the
this.
side you even have this pseudo Alcantara material, which actually feels really good.
It does, it
now,
does.
when I first tested this car, I asked Prodo about this because obviously this might be purchased by young families. You know,
Yes.
empty nesters and young families are like 1 or 2 kids because you do have 2 Isofix mounts back there, just like in the Aruz. And I did ask them whether or not this would be durable, and they said that because it's not Alcantara and because it's not suede, these should be relatively more durable over time. So it looks good,
Okay.
but it's also functional. And of course, as I'm sure you've noticed, these seats are also quite
Oh, yes.
comfortable.
I
They're
like
these
these.
semi-bucket seats kind of thing. I don't know why Prodoa does this on all their cars, but most of their new cars come with these semi-bucket seats in the front. And they're very comfortable, they're very supportive, and they have actually surprisingly good lumbar support,
Oh.
which is not something that a lot of Prodoas have had in a long time. So this is very, very comfortable. The Aruz also has similarly comfy seats, but these just look a little bit more youthful.
Yes, yes.
Because I am younger, so I really like this interior. But I appreciate the maturity and sort of stiff upper lipness that comes with the Aruz.
Yes, yes, I do.
And the thing about this car is, of course, the highlight feature is the fact that all of this is, again, hard wearing. It's sort of tough,
Yeah.
durable stuff, but everything just looks really good. You have lots of textured plastics, and you have a
Yeah.
lot of different textures. You have all the silver trim around the place, and it just looks really good. Now, in the back, of course, unlike the Aruz, you don't have 7 seats. You only have
Yes.
2 rows here. But the second row actually has a surprisingly generous amount of room, despite this car's relatively small footprint. As a result of the new architecture that this car is built on, the interior accommodations are a lot more generous. So they've maximized the amount of space in here. The floor, for example, is relatively flat. The rear seats actually sit a little bit higher than the ones in front, so that gives them a good view
Oh,
out.
I see.
And you also have a decent amount of space for your feet. And like I said, there's 2 Isofix mounts back there. You also have a third middle seat with a 3-point seat belt, so you can actually carry 5 passengers in here quite comfortably.
I gotta say though, there's a lot of space at the back that you can actually put a baby seat at the back there.
Of course you can. Not only can you put a baby seat in there relatively easily, thanks to the easily found Isofix mounts, you have little indicators of where those might be, so it's quite easy to put them in. But on top of that, the rear doors in this car open quite wide. So even though you might have a relatively bulky baby seat, or a slightly less bulky one, like the one that we've got here, courtesy of Prodoa, it should be very easy for you to get that car seat in, and you should be able to locate those Isofix points quite easily. And the top teller is also quite easy to find too.
Okay.
And if you have a kid back there, as I'm sure you've noticed, this car's relatively low belt line means that you have a good view out. So for adults or even for children, it'll be much more difficult for them to get car sick because you get a good view out all the time.
I like how this is just nicely lowered here. Because you know how some SUVs are a bit too high up, you know what I mean?
Exactly. But in this car, not only is this set up quite nicely, you can also raise the seats should you want to have a slightly more commanding driving position. Of course, you can do that in the Aruz as well.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, so that's how these cars look. And as I said, the exterior design tells a lot about how the interiors will play out eventually too. So now, let's take a look at how they drive, because once again, they present themselves very differently.
Okay, let's see that first. Okay, so we're driving the Aruz right now. Car feels great, but I think I want to know a lot more. So what's the stats of this car?
Okay, so under the bonnet, we've got a 1.5 litre VVTi engine, which puts out 102 PS and 133 Newton meters of torque. Power goes to the rear wheels via a 4-speed automatic gearbox. Yes, it's rear-wheel drive.
Rear-wheel?
The reason why it's rear-wheel drive is because it allows the car to efficiently move the vehicle forward. It allows the engine to move the vehicle efficiently forward. Because if it was front-wheel drive, it wouldn't feel quite as punchy, especially when you're trying to move a lot of this mass along. The Aruz is a relatively large car, so that's kind of important. More importantly, this engine is also shared with a 1.5 litre Prodo IV, and so parts availability tends to be quite easy. And of course, this engine has tried and tested reliability. So everybody knows that this engine works really well and it's perfectly capable. As you can see, we're climbing up a decent hill, and we've still got a decent amount of torque. You're barely touching the throttle, and the car can still pull itself up quite easily. This is as a result, again, of that relatively punchy and efficient engine, as well as the rear-wheel drive. And you hear that? You can't hear it.
No.
This engine is very smooth and it's very quiet. So when you're driving around town, this is about as much engine noise as you can expect.
It's very pleasant.
Exactly. And with the 2021 Prodo Aruz, you also get Goodyear Assurance Triple Max tires, which are relatively quiet. So when you're driving around in town, this is about as much NVH as you'll have. When you're driving out on the road, it gets a little bit louder, but at about 110, it's still perfectly reasonable and perfectly serviceable. It's a good family car. And it doesn't matter if you're sitting in the front or in the middle row or even all the way in the third row, this car remains quite quiet.
Oh, okay.
Fuel consumption is also pretty good too.
Yeah, it is. Let's see what we're doing. We've been traveling for quite a while.
Yep.
About 150 kilometers.
That's actually not that bad. I mean, this car is rated at some figure that I can't remember, 15 kilometers per litre or something like that. But realistically, you can expect to do about 13 to 15 kilometers per litre. 15 is only achievable if you're on the highway at a constant speed, 14-ish if you're driving in an urban setting.
Ah, okay.
So it's perfectly reasonable. A perfectly good town car, and it's perfectly good for long distance travel as well. And of course, thanks to the ladder frame chassis, it also means that you can actually haul stuff over longer distances as well.
Yep,
Let's say you moonlight as a durian farmer. You can put all your durian in the back and stink up the car quite nicely, but the frame will take that weight and the engine will have no issues pulling all that weight along.
Okay.
But that said, Ativa's got something a little bit different.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to driving the Ativa.
So let's go see what that's all about. So now we're in the Perodua Ativa, and the first thing that I have to point out is the fact that we are running a very different powertrain. So under the bonnet, you have a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged engine, which puts out 98 PS and 140 Newton meters of torque. So it's a little bit down on power from the Aruz, but it makes up for it with the torque. And instead of a 4-speed automatic, like literally every other Perodua, this car has a DCVT or dual CVT,
Okay.
which marries a CVT transmission or a belt transmission with a physical final gear, which allows the car to cruise at higher speeds at lower RPM. So it also allows for a more direct transfer of power also to the front wheels. So as a result, this car actually gets up and goes pretty well, quite decently, especially for a compact city car. And it also allows you to sustain high speed and cruise quite comfortably as well, and more importantly, quite efficiently. So that's already a very different proposition compared to the Aruz. Now, the other thing is, under the skin is a new chassis and a new platform for Perodua. So this platform is stiffer, it is more rigid, so there's more torsional rigidity as well, and it manages to integrate a lot of new safety features too. Such as, we'll get to that in a second. So we'll start with the chassis rigidity. So talking about the chassis rigidity, this car actually drives better than any other Perodua out there.
Really?
Yes, it's dartier, it's more direct, it actually feels a little bit more engaging. This car is genuinely fun to drive, even compared to things like the like certain competitor SUVs. This car actually drives better than that. It's a lot more fun to chuck around. And because of that new powertrain, you don't really hear a lot of the engine. Peroduas are kind of known to kind of rev a little bit higher, especially when you're on the highway, whereas this car is nicely muted all the time. Because that DCVT and the turbocharged engine, it means that it keeps the engine in that nice comfy torque band through most of the time. So the car stays quite muted, even at highway speeds. And when you talk about safety, of course, it goes back to the chassis. So this chassis can incorporate a lot of safety features. So under Perodua Smart Drive Assist, which is sort of the umbrella term for all safety features in this car, you get ASA 3.0, which is Active Safety Assist 3.0, which is the very latest version. So you have autonomous emergency braking, city speed as well as highway speed. You have forward collision warning, you have pedal misoperation alert, you have front vehicle departure alert as well.
Okay.
Now, under Perodua Smart Drive Assist, you have all sorts of other things. You have blind spot monitoring, for example. You have adaptive cruise control, which works from 30 all the way to 125 kilometers per hour. This car also comes with lane departure warning. So if you stray over a line, the car will beep you and it will actually bring the car back into the lane.
Oh, okay.
And that works together with the adaptive cruise control. So if you set the car to, say, 110 kilometers an hour, if a vehicle cuts in front of you, the car will slow down. If you go around a corner, the car will actually it'll provide some input towards the steering. So when you're driving, it means that you put in less effort to move the car along. Of course, you have to keep both hands on the wheels at all times. But it takes the strain out of long distance motoring, and it makes this car a very adept long distance cruiser. And thanks to the blind spot monitoring, it also means that if there's a car or a motorcycle, the blind spot, as there tends to be, like that, it will alert you that there is a vehicle or something there. And the blind spot monitoring also allows for rear cross traffic alert. So if you park, sort of head into a perpendicular parking space, you want to reverse out, if there is a car that you can't see via the reverse camera or through the windows, if it detects a vehicle moving across, the rear cross traffic alert will let you know that there is a car, and there will be a corresponding blinking light out on the mirror to let you know which direction that obstruction is coming from. So this is all part of Perodua's next generation of safety features, and its idea is to keep more motorists safe out on the road. It doesn't matter if you're in the Perodua or around the Perodua will try to keep you safe.
So for a car at this price point, with all these safety features, is this the only car that actually comes with all this?
At this price point, it is unrivaled.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so this car's got quite a lot. And again, when you pair all of those safety innovations along with this new powertrain, it makes this car a very compelling package. It doesn't matter if you are an empty nester or if you have a small, young family. This car is just great. If you're an empty nester like me with no plans to have children in the very near future, it's also pretty fun too, because you have that punchy engine, you've got all of these safety innovations, and it feels fantastic. This is a great car.
I can see that.
So I can see, and the thing is, the Aruz is a great car too, so I can see where the confusion comes from. But you know, decisions have to be made, so I guess it's now time to decide.
Alright, so I think let's park somewhere and then we'll just take a look at both cars and see if you can help me decide which one.
Okay, man. So we've taken a look at both of these cars. Which one do you think is best for me?
Okay, so the Perodua Aruz is a great car. So it is mature, it's grown up, it's very comfortable, and it's very practical with up to 7 seats and plenty of space for people and stuff within. And this car comes with ASA as well, so you always have a pair of eyes looking out for you. This is a fantastic vehicle, but so is the Ativa. Again, you have that same Perodua practicality, 5 seats, a decently sized boot, and under Perodua Smart Drive Assist with ASA 3.0, you have the same pair of eyes looking out for you, but they're just a little bit better. And on top of that, you have this fantastic engine, which is great both in town and on the highway. Both of these cars are absolutely fantastic, and you cannot go wrong picking either of them. It just depends on the lifestyle that you lead.
Okay, I get all that, but again, which one is best for me?
Bro, not my problem.
Man, serious lah, man. Man, I need one, man. Okay lah, I both lah.